Hello, it is a Tuesday, which means it's time for another in real life video. This week, we are not taking a general viewer submitted question, but as per usual, feel free to submit one. In the comments below helps if you include a question mark, that way I can sort through it and add it to my ever-growing list. But this week, we are going to cover something that I brought up a while ago during the Fallout 3 playthrough that we're currently doing. That being, well, to further preface this, I'll say that if you have watched the Fallout 3 playthrough, you're probably already aware of where I'm going to go with this. But this is about specifically Fawkes, right? And the ending of Fallout 3. So I guess we can start kind of from the top, from the get-go. We'll bring everyone up to speed. So also as well, if you're privy and worried to and worried about spoilers for Fallout 3, you probably shouldn't watch this video, right? Because we are going to talk in full detail about Fallout 3, main story quest spoilers and all of that, right? So my apologies if that is a concern for you. I'll see you hopefully in the next one. Anyway, in this situation, Fallout 3 sort of infamously had this ending wherein originally you were to go into the Jefferson Memorial at the Rotunda, the sort of water purifier. It's heavily irradiated, right? This is sort of like famous and infamous, wherein you would go up there and you would have to enter this highly irradiated room, which would normally kill your character when you did, and thus you wouldn't be able to play any more of the game after you finish the main story quest, right? Of course, Broken Steel introduced an update and all of that along with it. If you have Broken Steel installed, you can continue playing afterwards, right? And they sort of address this in the writing. The major gripe, I think, was maybe to a lesser degree that you couldn't play afterwards because, you know, that's kind of part and parcel at the time for a BGS game that you could continue playing around in the sandbox if you wanted to, and Broken Steel lets you do that. Anyway, let me rephrase it. I would say maybe the bigger grievance that folks had at the time was that if you had with you a companion, right, which Fallout 3, as far as I know, is the first BGS game to have like a remotely fleshed out follower companion system, right? Sort of the likes of which we know today in Fallout 4, in Starfield, right? But it was decently fleshed out, and they had a decent amount of characterization to them. So of course you could have one with you, and a lot of people had qualms with the fact that regardless of who your follower was, you could not ask them to enter this highly irradiated chamber in your stead, right? Which theoretically would save you, right? You couldn't persuade them to, and in some senses, it didn't make too much sense, right? In particular, there were three companions you could get in Fallout 3, one of which was a Mr. Gutsy robot, the other Sharon, the ghoul, the non-feral ghoul, and Fawkes, a friendly supermutant. All three of which, theoretically, should be able to, without any protection, using the same systems in place for Fallout 3, right, wherein power armor doesn't make you effectively hyper-resistant or immune to radiation. That doesn't exist in Fallout 3. Not until 4 and 76 is that the case. But also, Fallout Classic, right? CRPG Fallouts do have that, but not the case in Fallout 3, right? Regardless of all of that, not the case in Fallout 3 that wearing power armor makes you effectively immune to radiation. Because if you say to any of these followers, you would think, oh, they should probably go in there and turn off this purifier, which is about to explode because it's being overloaded with like water pressure or something like that. I forget the exact reason for it, but you need to send someone in, and you cannot, right? But thanks to Broken Steel, the DLC, you can send someone in or do it yourself, or even have Sarah Lyons do it, which is what we did during our playthrough. Now, the big qualm, like I said, is that those 3 followers ought to be able to do it without any harm coming to themselves, right? It makes perfect sense that a otherwise like radiation immune characters should be able to go in there, right? And I think that's, for the most part, fair enough for 2 of those followers. Of course, my major qualm with all of this, in a situation in which, frankly, I think BGS should have stuck to their guns with their original like writing of this, is with Fawkes, right? Fawkes, the super mutant, who, of course, super mutants are immune to radiation as far as we know, and Fawkes would have, and totally can now, thanks to Broken Steel, go in there and turn it off for you. My qualm isn't so much that Fawkes wouldn't be able to do it, but I would contend that Fawkes, the super mutant, wouldn't do it, right? Mentally, he would not do it. He would not agree with the idea to do it. And a lot of that goes back to his original reasoning. I do agree that the reasoning that Sharon, and God, I don't even know exactly what the Mr. Gutsy says when you ask it to go in. It may be that maybe it technically can't, right? Like it's not part of its programming, in which case that's okay. But I know for a fact that Sharon will say like, I'm not going to do that for you, right? Even though a lot of Sharon's, Sharon the Ghoul, a lot of their background is that like they're senselessly bound to a contract. So much so that they were stuck in a contract, a mercenary contract with a previous employer who was like a huge butthole, right? Horribly abusive to Sharon and to kind of the world around them. And Sharon didn't really like it so much, but was forced by the sort of contract itself to do their bidding, right? Regardless of how they felt about it. Thus, when you get Sharon as a follower, you have that contract, right? Sharon is following you on account of you being the one owning the contract. So Sharon should, without any second thoughts, similar to the previous person, the previous employer, Sharon should go in, right? I think that's a good correction, right? I think that makes sense. I would say artistically, you should. I would say that from an artistic merit standpoint, maybe you should consider sticking to your guns anyway, and just sticking with the idea like, oh, we kind of messed up, right? I think there's a case to be made for that, for just having something be bad, right? If we are to think of video games as like art, so too must there be some folly in the art, right? From time to time. I think updating story points and all of that, I think in some ways ruins. I don't know if ruin is the right word. That may be too extreme, but in some way takes away from the implicit nature of it being art, right? Of it being something that kind of stands alone, faults and all, right? Being able to update it after the fact and sort of change around narrative bits, right? Change around stuff to make maybe more sense, like in the case of Sharon. I think there's 100% a very good case to be made to where like you should just stick with the problem, right? You should just stick with it and have it be a bit of an issue, and you sort of go in with the expectation that your players are competent enough to understand like, yeah, this is kind of a work of art. It need not be updated. But I think we're beyond the pale with that now, wherein I don't know, there is a degree of player ownership, of feeling like they are owed a sort of narrative changing update. I think mechanically, like updating mechanics and stuff, and of course getting rid of bugs and all of that, that's not within these realms, or not within like the purview of what I'm talking about here, but more so within the original artistic vision for what was being attempted, right? I think at a certain point, we've come to a point where after stuff like the ending of Mass Effect 3 getting changed, wherein we're kind of willing to sacrifice the artistic merit of something and update it. We're willing to update it with a future update or expansion or DLC or whatever. And a lot of times we kind of look the other way, right? If it makes sweeping changes to stuff rather than just like sort of adding on more to what's already there, right? I think there's definitely a clear difference there where an update can sort of add more to the existing like ethos, thesis, or whatever of the writing. I think that's a different situation. But regardless, like I said, all of this is beyond the pale. We're already at a point where like we're choosing to sort of ignore the artistic merit of something, and we're just like, just make it better, just update it, right? In the instance of like, oh, this is a TV show or a movie where you didn't like the ending, right? In the case of a video game, if enough people complain about it and the game was successful enough, in some cases they'll just change it. They'll just update it and change the ending to appease more people, which I don't know. Like I said, it's kind of wild. It kind of, I think, hampers the idea of arguing that video games are more so art than a lot of people would claim they wouldn't be. Right? If that makes any sense. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Sharon going in totally makes sense, right? If we remove ourselves from all that we were just talking about, separate conversation, a separate line of thinking, let's think about Fawkes going in. I don't think it makes a lick of sense for Fawkes to actually go in, right? I think that they were originally right on the money when it came to Fawkes saying, in the non-broken steel version, Fawkes says something along the lines of, I won't deprive you of your destiny, right? It is your destiny to enter this irradiated chamber, this purifier, tied to your family, tied to your father's work. All that you've been doing in the Capital Wasteland through the main story quest has led to this defining moment for you. This is your moment of destiny. You need to go in there. Self-sacrifice is demanded here. I think that is actually the correct read for Fawkes as a character. Because chiefly, when you first meet Fawkes, right? Fawkes brings up the fact that, obviously is evident that Fawkes is a above average intelligence super mutant for the Capital Wasteland, right? Is more akin to super mutants you see on the West Coast in the CRPG Fallouts 1 and 2, and in New Vegas, right? But Fawkes is a lot more intelligent. The FEV has sort of gone a lot more like how it used to, which they actually don't want, right? Which on the East Coast, they actually weren't trying to do that. But Fawkes has been tormented, stuck in this chamber for a long time, kept mostly company by just reading on a data terminal, where he had access to like a vast, I don't know how vast, but some unknown amount of literature, right? Wherein he got his namesake. He was inspired by, of course, Guy Fawkes. Fawkes specifically goes out to point out that he was inspired by because it was a guy who was willing to, a guy who was willing to die for his own beliefs, for what he believed in the world, for his own politics and all of that. He was willing to make that self-sacrifice for that, which sounds a lot like what happens to the Lone Wanderer at the end of Fallout 3. Thus, I feel like it's 100% in character, 100% within the like realm of belief that Fawkes would say to the Lone Wanderer and say, no, I'm not going to go in there. This is your Guy Fawkes moment, right? This is the time for you to shine, just like the hero who I idolize, the individual that I had read about. This is your moment. People will sing a tale of this day when you, the Lone Wanderer, entered here selflessly and did it. I won't rid it of you. I won't rid this moment, this pivotal moment in history from you. This is your time. I will remember you. If anything, I will go on to sing praises of this day, right? I find it inspiring and all of that, just in the same way that Guy Fawkes was inspiring to me when I was locked in the chamber. it makes perfect sense, right? I think the one major flaw here, which I brought up at the moment in the playthrough that I was talking about at the beginning of this, is that followers in Fallout 3, companions in Fallout 3, are not nearly as fleshed out as they are in Fallout 4, right? Especially compared to ones who get a lot more writing, like Nick Valentine. All of the followers in Fallout 3 are kind of, a lot of their writing is very, like, on the, I don't know, on the periphery, right? A lot of it you just kind of gather from, like, context clues when you first meet them, little combat barks that they have on occasion, idle audio that plays sometimes, depending on where you are. That's the most part where you get it. The way in which they could have pulled this off more seamlessly, right? Like, I do think first and foremost, I think it's maybe an issue wherein the player base just didn't understand Fawkes, right? They just didn't understand the characterization. They blanked on what they were trying to convey about this character from the get-go, right? That he is very idealistic and 100% is the type of individual who would think like, yeah, you should die for your ideas, right? That is 100% Fawkes the Super Mutant's characterization. The issue is that followers in Fallout 3 don't really have quests associated with them, right? They don't have a large amount of reactivity to the world. Ergo, Fawkes has very few opportunities to sort of present to the player and sort of continually relay to the player that this is their personality, right? They mostly get away with this in Fallout 4 because they are afforded those times for exposition to sort of say like, oh, my character is so-and-so like this, right? You get a rough idea of like, oh, of course, what's his name? Hancock he has a relationship with someone in Diamond City. He's really done a lot of drugs, right? This other follower has also done a lot of drugs, but similarly isn't similar to Hancock in that she kind of wants out, right? You sort of get a better feel for the characters, right? They continually reinforce their characterization here and there throughout the entire game, right? You get a good idea of what they're all about. When it comes to Fawkes, the players are kind of like let down in this regard because there's not just a whole bunch of situations where Fawkes gets to talk about, well, I'm very idealistic, Lone Wanderer. Don't you remember the guy who I love, Guy Fawkes? I think he was a good thing that he died for his ideas and beliefs. And if that ever happened to me or to you, I would think that you should die for what you believe in, right? I think you should die for a greater purpose because I'm all about that, right? You're not given a lot of opportunity to sort of hear that about Fawkes and definitely not to internalize that. So it does, on the flip side, make sense that a lot of players wouldn't know that. But to reiterate, that's probably an issue more so mechanically with Fallout 3's companion system, which I feel is maybe, growing pains, as it were, because this is a system that was, for the most part, they just started dabbling into getting personalities for companions and stuff after Oblivion and after Morrowind, certainly, wherein there's a decent amount of like people who can follow you in there, but I don't know, in Oblivion, you never really have like a dedicated follower, right? Like Mazoga the orc isn't someone who you're going to have around with you a whole bunch. A lot of the followers are just for like a specific quest arc or the main story quest arc, right? Where they sort of just exist there within that specific story. They don't exist in the world beyond that. Fallout 3 is sort of the first case in a BGS game where that really starts to happen, right? Where they sort of, they're companions with you as you travel through the role-playing game sandbox, right? So we sort of see how we arrived at this situation, but I do think, right, my sort of grievance, as it were, is that they were right to have him not do that. I think so many people, I remember so many people back in the day saying that Fawkes was a damn fool, that it was so horrible that Fawkes decided to have you go in and die, right? When, I don't know, dog, we're like completely missing the point of his character, is that he is this idealist who totally believes that you should die for it, right? It makes way more sense, like we had said at the start of this, that Sharon would totally have to go in because he's so beholden to the contract. And, you know, like I said, I don't remember what the Mr. Gutsy says as an excuse. It may have been like a programming situation where like it's not programmed to behave in a certain way. I don't know. But Fawkes is the one that stands out the most, and Fawkes is certainly the one that is always brought up when discussing sort of the original ending and the changes to the ending of Fallout 3. And I don't know, like I said, to reiterate the main point and thesis of this video, I think it was a mistake to change it, right? I think they should have had it to where Fawkes still refuses to go in, right? I think they were right. They were right to have him not do it. Though their only mistake was not reinforcing more to the player that this is a character who wouldn't do this, right? This is a character who wants you to go in there, right? That's their mistake, right? Their mistake is not having him refuse to go in. Their mistake is not better characterizing him, right? Or not characterizing him because they already did it, but sort of reinforcing and relaying to the player, making sure that the player understands more throughout your adventures with him. Like, oh, this is the way in which this character operates in the world, right? This is their beliefs. They have a strong set of ideas, and this is how they operate, you know? I think it's 100% a wild thing where I think there's a lot of people who still don't think, or who still think that that it was just bad writing for Fawkes to not have you go in there. If anything, I would contend it's bad writing that Fawkes doesn't have you die, right? I think Fawkes should have you die. I think that makes way more sense. I think that's more poetic to the character, right? More true to the character. But that's sort of my big grievance, as it were. This is very specific, but like I said, a lot of this is spurred on by a relative recency with us playing Fallout 3 and being at that specific moment. Like I said, in the Fallout 3 playthrough, I devoted a lot of time making this point and sort of talking about this point in there. But I wanted to have it in a specific standalone video. And who knows, maybe this will exit the orbit of the channel. Who can say? I would love that. But either way, I want it to be somewhere that I can refer to specifically, right? The main takeaway, Fawkes was right? They shouldn't have changed Fawkes. Fawkes was right on the money. It made perfect sense for Fawkes to not take away your moment of destiny, right? It made perfect sense. His whole character is inspired by Guy Fawkes and that sort of that pivotal moment of self-sacrifice, right? His whole worldview is sort of governed and dictated by that. They shouldn't have changed it. They were right. They were right. They nailed it. The only part they didn't nail was letting people, like, making sure that players understood. And also Sharon, right? The stuff with Sharon, that was actually bad, right? The stuff with Sharon was they were wrong for that, right? All right, that ought to do it for this week. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I don't know. I like talking about this stuff, thinking about this stuff. It is the stuff. What defines the playthroughs for me, at least, is being able to get into the nitty gritty and talk about junk like this for, honestly, way too long, right? When next we do another IRL video, like I said, it may be a general viewer submit question, so feel free to submit a question if you'd like. Until next time, please take care of each other.